Am I doing it right? Well, hello there. I am your coach, Melanie Black, and today we are going to talk all about clean eating. I've gotten some great questions this week about clean eating, so let's dive right in. All right, first off, what is it? Will it lead to weight loss? And what are the pros and cons of clean eating? First off, clean eating is really just a catch-all term that can refer to eating whole food or unprocessed food. But it is important to remember that some people will definitely put their own spin on it and extend the meaning to include their personal beliefs around healthy eating. So clean eating is not one specific diet. It can mean a number of things to a number of different people. Pretty much everybody can agree that clean eating does include vegetables. It does include maybe nuts, grains, maybe, and that's where we get into some of the interesting disagreements that people have on what they consider healthy or not. Is meat healthy? Is are dairy products healthy? Should we only be eating raw food, or only vegan, or only GMO free, or pesticide free, or organic? All these various things can come into play when we're talking about clean eating. But I would say that most people can agree that we're talking about whole unprocessed foods or foods with minimal processing. So what we're talking about with clean eating is not doing things that have multiple steps. Like, for example, donuts are, they use refined sugar. They are not only a ground refined flour, but they're also fried on top of that. So there are many, many steps to processing a donut. There are other things that do require some processing that most people would still consider whole food. For example, grains or beans. These things do need to be cooked. We're not going to eat them in their raw state in most cases, but most people would still consider oats, for example, or oatmeal in the clean eating category. Dairy is often not considered clean eating, even though there's maybe relatively similar number of steps between certain types of dairy and certain types of grain foods. But then we get into vegetarian, vegan. It's very confusing, okay? But for the purposes of our conversation, when I say clean food, when I'm talking about eating clean to one of my clients, for example, one of the things that I think that we can all agree on is that more vegetables and fruits are wonderful in the diet for most people. So when you're thinking about clean eating, when you're thinking about whole food, this picture right here gives a nice example, a nice summary. We've got some beans, we've got some fruits, we've got berries and vegetables and avocados and all kinds of grains and wonderful root vegetables. We've also got some animal proteins such as salmon. So I do include animal proteins when I am speaking about our unprocessed foods, right, or minimally processed foods. So clean eating, like I said, can mean a number of different things to different people, and this can get problematic down the way, as we'll discuss in a little bit here. But let's move on. Can clean eating lead to weight loss? Honestly, clean eating can lead to either weight loss or weight gain. Whether or not we're trying to lose weight depends largely on how many calories we're taking in. I will say that for most people, clean eating lots of whole food and minimally processed food will definitely, at least in the beginning, lead to some weight loss, even without counting calories, because it is high volume, low calorie food. The amount of vegetables you would need to eat to equal the same amount as a donut, for example, the sheer volume of vegetables will require so much more eating that most people won't easily exceed that point. However, it is very easy to start overeating your calories once you've been eating clean for a while, because your body naturally seeks out calories, so you will naturally find ways to make clean eating more calorically dense the longer you do it, if you're not following a plan that requires specific amounts for each meal. So for example, if you start doing smoothies, boy, oh boy, do smoothies pack in the calories. So if you are a person who wants to both eat clean and gain weight, smoothies are one of the top #1 ways I recommend doing that. Especially if we start adding things like nut milks or coconut milk to our smoothies. Oh my goodness, we may as well be drinking butter, it's so much calories. Things like dates, natural sources of sugar, fruits. We can easily overeat our calories on some of these whole food, unprocessed, clean eating items. So just keep that in mind. Now, for most of the fat loss plans that I do recommend to folks, there is a lot of vegetables. There's a lot of unprocessed foods on there, but we still take a look at the amounts of those foods we should be eating. We still take a look at how much per meal to keep it within the calorie requirements for a good, steady fat loss plan. So yes, you can gain or lose weight on a whole food or a clean eating plan. It doesn't necessarily guarantee weight loss just in and of itself. Although many people will find when they start eating clean, they do start losing weight. So what are the pros and the cons of clean eating? So far it seems like, yeah, there's probably nothing wrong with it, right? It seems like it's a really good idea, and for the most part it is. But there are some definite pros and cons, so let's discuss that a little bit here. #1 pro, more fiber. More fiber. Americans do not get enough fiber. Get more fiber. We want at least 25 grams of fiber per day, unless you have one of a very few medical conditions that require you that you don't have very much fiber, but most people need more fiber in a big way and are falling woefully short of that 25 grams per day. So one of the biggest things that you will get out of a clean eating diet is more fiber. This, however, can lead to some gastrointestinal distress if you are not used to eating this way, because it does take a while for your gut bacteria to kind of catch up and figure out what the heck's going on down there. So clean eating can lead, in the short term at least, to some gastrointestinal distress, loose bowel movements, stiff bowel movements, like having some problems going on down there. So just be aware of that. And of course, always check with your doctor when you're making dietary changes, especially if you are experiencing some of these problems. Okay, so more fiber is a good one. One of the cons, vitamin deficiencies. And I know what you're thinking, vitamin deficiencies on a clean eating diet? But Melanie, isn't that the whole reason why I would be clean eating, so I can get all these fabulous vitamins and minerals from all of the fruits and the vegetables and why would I be vitamin deficient on a clean eating plan? Let me tell you. Now, a lot of the vitamins and minerals we get are actually from enriched foods, and those enriched foods are things that are often considered sort of a staple part of the American diet. They're put into these foods to prevent the general population from having a vitamin deficiency in important things like vitamin D and iron. A lot of these have been added to things like milk, bread, things that we eat, salt, iodine and salt. So if you suddenly take all of these processed foods out of your nutrition plan and switch to only whole food, especially if you're only starting with a few different types, a few different varieties of fruits and vegetables, and especially if you're not getting a full spectrum amino acids from animal proteins, there's a lot of things that can go wrong. So I do highly recommend anyone who is beginning a clean eating program, take a multivitamin. Just take a regular general multivitamin just to get all your bases covered. If you're suddenly going to eliminate your processed foods that also happen to be your enriched foods like cereals, pasta, that kind of thing, be sure to just take a multivitamin and you'll be fine. You'll be fine. And yes, you will get different vitamins and minerals from the vegetables, from the fruits, and they will be, in many cases, more easily absorbed into the body because you're taking them in sort of in their natural state. So there's a lot of benefits there too. But yes, vitamin deficiencies is actually a serious problem with somebody just suddenly switching to this way of eating without replacing those fortified foods that they may be used to having in their diet. Okay, new recipes. I love changing an eating plan because it forces us to think about new things that we might enjoy eating. So it's an adventure. It should be an adventure. If you're thinking about going on a clean eating plan for a while, taking out all the processed stuff, one of the main benefits to doing something like that is to explore new ways of eating and discover new things that you will love. So new recipes, new foods are a wonderful reason to do clean eating. Now, on the other hand, clean eating can lead to a disordered eating. So what we really don't want to do when we're switching to clean eating is we don't want to vilify food. This is where I come up and bump heads with some of the folks who associate clean eating with only organic or only a certain very narrow, like raw only food, that kind of thing, is because if we are it's one thing to say this is the way I want to eat and I'm going to have fun doing this and this is good for my body and I enjoy this, and it's a very another thing to say donuts are evil, potato chips are evil, that food will make you sick, it's poison, it's bad for you, and it's going to make you ill and terrible and a terrible person. You're a terrible person if you eat it. So you don't want to go down that mental spiral. Just because something is good does not mean that something else has to be bad, okay? That is why many of the plans that I recommend have both whole unprocessed food and some processed food too, because let's face it, processed food is delicious. You can still get all of your major macronutrients from many processed foods: carbohydrate, protein, and your fats. So make sure that as you are going in, diving deep into your clean eating journey, that you don't start vilifying food as a way to prevent yourself from eating those foods. Rather than smacking yourself on the wrist saying, no, I can't have that, that's evil, that's bad, I'm only going to have this thing. Think about like, oh, what would I really enjoy today that is on my plan, that is on my clean eating plan? What can I really look forward to? And then gravitate towards that with a positive mindset. The other problem I have with clean eating mindset for a lot of people is they're thinking about their body as something that needs to be cleaned. Your body's fine, and it's a dirty, messy, crazy place up in there. You are this gelatinous mass of cells and bacteria. Your bacteria even outnumber your cells. And I don't want you to think of yourself as a machine that needs to be cleaned. Think of yourself more as a delicate ecosystem. If I need to clean out my fish tank, I don't just dump some bleach in there, right? This is not clean eating, right? You're not going to drink some cleanser or some Drano and flush anything out of your body. You don't want to think about cleansing or cleaning out your body, because when your body is functioning correctly, there's a delicate ecosystem in there. So if I want to clean my fish tank, I'm going to gradually introduce some new water. I want to do it gradually so I don't shock the fish, right? Same thing with your body. You want to gradually introduce new foods. You want to make sure that you're nurturing the bacteria that love all those fruits and vegetables and nice rich whole foods, and then you'll start craving those foods more and slowly starve out the bacteria that are loving the sugars. And as that happens, you will be craving sugar less. So think of your body less as a machine and more of an ecosystem. And that's the one area where the phrasing clean eating can be a little bit misleading, because honestly, clean eating, if we are eating stuff that has all that fiber makes a beautiful home for bacteria. It makes them very, very happy. So think about it as making a sanctuary for your body's all of your little ecosystems to thrive and grow and give you the nutrients that you need in that wonderful relationship you have. Okay, so yeah, we don't want to spiral down disordered eating thinking as we get going here. A lower grocery bill or a higher grocery bill. Again, many of these differences boil down to whether you think clean eating must be organic, non-GMO, locally sourced, There's so many different things. So for example, when I say clean eating, one of the things that people often don't think about is frozen vegetables. But frozen vegetables are wonderful on a clean eating plan, in part because when you buy frozen vegetables, often they are frozen right after harvest as as opposed to something that is in the fresh portion of the grocery store that has perhaps been sitting on a truck for a couple of weeks. Are they both good, fresh and frozen? Yes, absolutely. And frankly, I prefer the taste of fresh vegetables in most cases personally, but there's nothing wrong with frozen. There's nothing wrong with canned. Some people have food deserts. They can't get access to, fresh, locally sourced vegetables or whatever. So it can, you can make it as cheap or as expensive as you want. You can either shop at the Whole Foods if you want to spend a pretty penny and that makes you feel good about life, or like in my local neighborhood, we have Food City, which caters mainly to the Hispanic population and the Asian market, and those places where, it's more in the culture to have lots of fruits, vegetables, all that kind of thing, and not pay out the nose for it. You can actually save a lot of money by, if you have those types of markets in your neighborhood, shop there. There's also a food program in Tucson here called Powwow, Produce on Wheels Without Waste, and they're an organization that takes produce that was rejected by the grocery stores, and rather than putting it in the landfill, they sell it way cheap, like way cheap. So if you have a similar program, food rescue program in your neighborhood, there's lots of ways to eat clean, really a lot cheaper than processed foods if you know where to look, and if you think about it in terms of getting the staple basics. Don't get like the non-GMO, hydroponic, locally sourced, whatever, all the buzzwords, right? Don't worry about that. If it was growing and you or breathing and you only took a couple of steps between that state and the state that goes in your belly, minimally processed equals what we want in most cases for healthier food in the body. So think about it in terms of, less in terms of what the buzzwords on the packaging or on the marketing are, and more in terms of how many steps did it have to take to get to be food, right? So it's one thing if I have like a grilled chicken breast, that's like, 2 steps, like butchering the chicken, throwing it on the grill. If I have fried chicken, it's butchering the chicken, battering it, heating up the oil, frying it in the oil. So now there's more steps, so it's a more processed food and it's more calorically dense. So that's kind of how you can tell whether it's a processed or unprocessed food, is how many steps. If we can keep it to 2 or 3 steps max, then we're looking pretty dang good, right? Okay, so yeah, lower grocery bill, hopefully. Look to make it a lower grocery bill, not a higher grocery bill, unless you got money to burn and it just makes you feel good to get the fancy stuff. Okay, more variety or less variety. So again, here either one could be true. When you go into clean eating, ideally we're expanding the variety of foods that we're eating. We're eating more different types of foods. Now, less variety can happen if for example, we are just we might be picky eaters. We might say, you know what, I just don't like eating a lot of vegetables. There's a lot of vegetables I don't like. There's a lot of unprocessed foods that I don't like. Most of the foods that I like are processed. If that's you, don't worry about it. You can do the less variety for a little while, but slowly start to expand your palate. If you're happy with eating the same 5 things over and over again, that could be all right too, as long as you got your major macronutrients in there, your protein, fat, your carbohydrate, and that you're getting enough all around fiber and maybe taking that multivitamin as well. All right. So here we go. And then finally, food pride versus food classism. So this ties into what we were talking about with the grocery bills and the disordered eating. Food classism, again, there are lots of places that have, food deserts. They don't have access to like 10 different kinds of grocery stores and a Whole Food and a local market and a farmer's market and So a lot of what is put out there in the world that frustrates me with clean eating from other, fitness gurus, especially the the Fitspo Instagram kind of crowd, is that like, oh, I've got my, whole organic chia with, coconut milk and blah, 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 and all these ingredients that maybe a person just might not have access to, either financially or because of where they live. So whole food eating or unprocessed food eating can be done even if you have to do it with canned food, okay? Even if you have to do it with staple ingredients that last longer on the shelf. So there are ways to do it even if you live in one of these areas that has kind of a food desert. If you're lucky enough to live in a city or a place that has lots of variety and lots of things happening, that's wonderful for you, but just be a little bit sensitive, a little bit empathetic to the fact that there are people out there who maybe cannot do that, and just don't let it go to your head that like, oh, it has to be this bougie kind of shit, right? It doesn't. On the other hand, you do want to take pride in your food, right? Take pride in your recipes, and again here, this can go for so if somebody says like, hey, look, I made this amazing thing. Check it out. It's this beautiful, healthy recipe. You don't want to just like say, oh well, it's not organic or it's not whatever. If it is a step in the right direction to not only having a positive experience with your food, but having a positive experience with your food that does include more unprocessed or less processed food, that is fantastic. So you should absolutely take pride in your food. Again, we want it to be a positive experience. We want to take pride in our food. We want to look forward to our food, not vilify or put certain weird sub categories of food on a pedestal. It is more about like, oh, this is awesome. I'm excited about this new recipe, about this new food. So those are the reasons to gravitate towards clean eating. Clean eating should be fun. You should try it. If you're currently eating a lot of processed foods, try replacing those processed foods with more vegetables, with more lean proteins, with more healthy fats like avocados and olives and nuts, and see what happens. Now, if you do want to actually lose body fat with this, if you do want to not only do clean eating, but you have a very specific goal of body fat loss, and you're in a hurry, definitely go to www.thenerdgym.com, join at any membership level, and I will hook you up with the correct meal plan for that outcome. But if you're not in a hurry and you're just doing some self-experimentation, just get into it. Just start eating more vegetables, eating more minimally processed foods, minimally processed grains, and see what happens. Keep a journal. Take progress notes of what's happening in your body, how you're feeling, all that good stuff. And you don't need any supplements or anything crazy to do this in general, but what I do recommend is that multivitamin. It doesn't have to be a fancy one, just a regular over-the-counter multivitamin. That'll do you. Otherwise, have fun with it. Do all the things. Okay, tell me about your clean eating journey or your favorite clean eating recipes down in the comments. Give this video a like or a dislike or comment or ask me questions, any of that stuff. I appreciate you, and I'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. Bye!